Have you ever felt like you're holding your life together with threads so thin they might snap at any moment, like you're doing everything you're supposed to, showing up, staying strong, checking every box, and yet somehow you still feel anxious, stuck, or invisible? If so, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. There's a strange and powerful shift that happens when you finally stop clinging, not in the reckless, I give up kind of way, but in the deep, soul-freeing way that quietly unhooks you from the invisible chains of fear, pressure, and the desperate need to stay in control. It feels less like giving up and more like waking up. Because here's the wild truth. Most of us are never taught. The majority of your suffering doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from how tightly you're holding on. Think about that. The job you're scared to lose, the relationship you're trying so hard to keep from falling apart, the identity you've built, brick by brick, just to feel safe in a world that never stops spinning. These things aren't inherently painful. What hurts is how much you've attached your worth, your safety, your survival to them. But what if letting go wasn't failure? What if it wasn't weakness, but wisdom? What if it's the exact thing that finally sets things right, not out there in the world but inside you? Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you create space between who you are and what you fear. It means you stop measuring your peace by what stays and start discovering your power in what you're willing to release. And here's something else. No one tells you, when you stop grasping so tightly, things don't fall apart. They fall into place. The right people stay. The wrong things lose their grip. Your vision clears. You begin to breathe again, not just from your lungs, but from your life. So if you've been wondering why everything still feels heavy, even though you've tried so hard to do it right, maybe the invitation isn't to hold on tighter. Maybe the invitation is to let go. And if you stay open just a little longer, if you let this truth settle into the spaces you've kept clenched for years, there's one more thing you might realize. The moment you loosen your grip is the exact moment life begins to rise up and meet you, not where you think you should be, but exactly where you are. No. 1. The illusion of control, and the quiet power of letting go. Have you ever wondered if your constant need to manage, fix, and orchestrate everything is actually the very thing making your life feel so heavy? We spend our waking hours tightening our mental grip on people, on plans, on outcomes, as if clenching hard enough might keep the chaos at bay, as if worry were a form of protection, as if control, somehow, might guarantee safety. But here's the quiet paradox. The tighter you try to hold life still, the more it slips through your fingers, like sand, dry and defiant, refusing to be possessed. Control feels comforting on the surface. It's familiar, predictable. It gives the illusion that we are steering the ship, but at its root, control is often nothing more than fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of what might happen if we're not one step ahead of everything. It's the ego's clever way of avoiding vulnerability, and it whispers lies like, if you just plan harder, if you just anticipate better, you won't get hurt. But you and I both know, deep down, that's not how life works. There's a reason the old Zen saying, "Let go or be dragged," rings so deeply true. It's not just poetic wisdom, it's a lifeline, because clinging emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, doesn't create peace. It creates pressure, anxiety, exhaustion. It narrows your vision until all you can see is what might go wrong, what must be fixed, or what should have happened instead. And in that mindset, joy becomes conditional. Rest becomes guilt. The present moment becomes something to survive, not to savor. Buddhism speaks often of non-attachment, not as indifference, but as freedom. A reminder that life was never meant to be tamed. That love isn't love if you're just trying to cage it. That peace doesn't come from getting your way, it comes from loosening your grip on needing it. You don't own this moment. You don't even own the breath you're taking right now. You're simply here, passing through it, being shaped by it. If you're willing to soften enough to let it shape you, so ask yourself, how much of your precious energy have you poured into micromanaging the uncontrollable? How many hours have you spent rehearsing arguments that never happened, clinging to people already drifting, obsessing over details that were never yours to carry? And in return, what did it give you? Peace or pressure? Now imagine an experiment, a sacred pause. Just for a single day, you stop wrestling with life. You stop overcorrecting, overthinking, overreaching. You don't force the moment into submission. Instead, you breathe. You witness. You meet the day as it comes. You respond instead of reacting. You choose calm over control, presence over perfection. And in that space, unguarded, uncertain, you begin to feel something radical rise. Freedom. Not because you conquered the chaos, but because at last you stopped needing to. Ask yourself, gently but honestly, what am I so afraid will happen if I let go right now? Really pause and listen. Most of the time, the answer isn't something catastrophic. It's not danger. It's not death. It's discomfort. And here's the secret life keeps trying to whisper. Discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your invitation. It's the raw, unpolished doorway to transformation, to evolution, to who you're meant to become. Maybe that job you didn't get wasn't a failure. It was divine redirection. Maybe that relationship that slipped through your fingers wasn't meant to be your forever, just a sacred chapter, a mirror, a teacher. Life has always been trying to guide you, to shape you, to carry you where you need to be. But we're often too busy resisting to notice, too busy gripping tightly to the map we drew for ourselves, ignoring the signs pointing to a better path. Letting go doesn't mean everything falls apart. That's the illusion. More often than not, things fall into place, not always the place you planned, but often the place your soul needed all along. Because surrender isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. It's about finally realizing that strength isn't in the fight, it's in the faith. The courage to trust the current, the bravery to stop swimming upstream just because you're scared of where the river might take you. Try this next time your mind starts to tense, when your chest tightens and your thoughts spiral into control mode. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this worth the weight I'm carrying? Is this fight, this clench, this anxiety really protecting me, or is it only exhausting me? And then, if you're willing, loosen your grip. Just a little. Let the breath return to your body. Let trust rise in its place, not blind trust, wise trust, the kind that says, I may not know how this ends, but I know I am not meant to suffer through every second trying to control it. You might be surprised what happens when you do. Life has a way of unfolding in the space control once occupied. Peace begins to seep in, not because everything is perfect, but because you stop trying to force it to be. A monk once said, peace is not found in a place without noise, trouble, or hard work. It is found in the midst of those things, when the mind is calm. That kind of calm doesn't come from managing every detail. It comes from trusting the rhythm of life, from knowing that you're not supposed to carry everything alone, from finally believing that it's okay to release the version of yourself you've been desperately trying to force, because maybe, just maybe, the person you're becoming is far more powerful, far more free. Let this truth land softly. If you want to fly, you have to leave the ground. If you want to move forward, you have to let go of what's been pulling you backward. Let go, not as a defeat, but as an offering. Let life meet you halfway, and watch with awe as what once felt like chaos begins to gently arrange itself into something meaningful, something whole. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever do is stop holding on. The paradox of detachment, how letting go makes you unshakably powerful, What if the very thing you're gripping the tightest, the dream, the outcome, the need to know, was the very thing holding you back? What if your desire, however well-intentioned, had quietly turned into a chain? We live in a world that worships control. We measure success in milestones and numbers, chase goals with tunnel vision, and tie our worth to outcomes like they're life rafts. We pull harder, push faster, believing that if we just care enough, try hard enough, we can force life to obey. But there's a deeper truth most of us overlook. The more you yank on the string, the more the kite wobbles. You don't lift it by dragging it down, you lift it by releasing it. That sips the paradox of detachment. The moment you stop needing something, you begin to invite it in, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped clinging. You released the fear. You loosened the story that said, "I sip, not whole without this." It sounds backward. Gain by letting go, strength through surrender. But this wisdom runs deep through the roots of Buddhist teaching. Detachment is not about withdrawal. It's not about becoming numb or distant or indifferent. It's about becoming free, fully present, fully alive, yet unburdened by the weight of expectation. It's about showing up, not from desperation, but from stillness. Not because you must win, but because you are already enough, whether you do or don't. When you're truly detached, you're not disconnected. You're actually more connected, more in tune, more awake, because your mind is no longer strangled by the need to control what happens next. You stop reacting from fear. You stop confusing identity with achievement. In Buddhist thought, attachment is the root of suffering, not because desire is evil, but because we've learned to confuse having with being, outcomes with identity. Wanting isn't the problem. Needing it to define you, that's where suffering begins. Think about your own journey for a moment. Has there been a time when you poured every ounce of yourself into something, maybe a relationship, a promotion, a dream, and the harder you tried to force it into place, the more it slipped away? You stayed up late second-guessing, revising, overthinking every detail. You rehearsed conversations, questioned your worth, tweaked your plans again and again, hoping this time would be the breakthrough. But instead of feeling closer, you felt more lost. Instead of peace, pressure. Instead of clarity, confusion. Why? Because force closes doors that only surrender can open. Real power doesn't come from controlling every outcome. It comes from knowing who you are without them, from acting in alignment with your truth, not your panic. Detachment gives you that clarity. It frees your energy, it silences the noise of what if, and what then, and replaces it with presence, with trust, with grace. Let this be your quiet shift. Move with intention but not obsession. Dream boldly, but don't let the dream own you. Care deeply, but don't forget, you are already whole, and sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is take a breath and let go. Not to lose what you love, but to finally allow it the space to grow. Why? Because your power doesn't come from the grip. It comes from your presence. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You shift your focus from, "Will this work?" to, "Is this true for me?" That one question changes everything, because now you're not reacting out of fear, you're responding from alignment. Practice this, set your intentions clearly, but release the outcome. Speak with honesty, not manipulation. Show up to your work, your relationships, your dreams, not with expectation, but with sincerity, and then step back. Trust that what's meant for you will unfold in its own time. Meditate on impermanence. Watch your thoughts and emotions rise and fall like waves. Nothing stays, not even pain. The moment you realize this, you start living lighter. You begin to move with life, not against it. Ask yourself, am I pushing too hard for something that should unfold naturally? Often what we force fails, what we allow grows. It's not weakness to surrender, it's wisdom. It's understanding that control is an illusion, but presence is power. What have you really gained by clinging too tightly? More peace or more pain? More clarity or more chaos? And what if, just what if, letting go is the shortcut to everything you've been chasing? Remember, the seed doesn't bloom because you scream at it to grow. It blooms when you give it space. Detachment doesn't disconnect you. It positions you for power, real power, the kind that flows from authenticity, not anxiety. So stop gripping, loosen the string, let your kite rise, let go, and let life lift you. How overthinking pushes away what you set trying to attract. You tell yourself you're being productive. You call it planning, preparing, problem solving, but in truth, you're just spinning, caught in the exhausting echo chamber of your own mind. Overthinking wears the mask of intelligence, whispering that if you just analyze a little more, dig a little deeper, loop the scenario one more time, you'll find the answer. But it's a lie, a well-disguised one, because the more you stir the waters, the murkier they become. You're not solving, you're sinking. Imagine a still pond, crystal clear, reflective, peaceful. But the more you prod it, stir it, poke at it in panic, the more the mud rises from the bottom, turning everything cloudy. Your mind is no different. It doesn't need more thinking. It needs stillness, because stillness is what reveals the truth. But here's the hard part. Stillness scares us. We've been conditioned to confuse motion with meaning. In a culture that glorifies busyness, silence feels like surrender. We associate stillness with laziness, with not caring enough, with missing out. So instead of pausing, we press harder. We obsess. We replay old conversations until they lose all shape. We forecast 10 different versions of the future. We scroll, we compare. We create entire stories in our heads, convinced that just one more thought will unlock the peace we're looking for. But it never does. Because overthinking doesn't come from wisdom, it comes from fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of losing control. In Buddhist philosophy, this restless mental energy is called the monkey mind, a mind that leaps from one thought to the next, never pausing, never landing, always grasping for control it never truly has. The monkey mind doesn't trust the present. It lives in the past or worries about the future. It drowns out the voice of wisdom with noise. But here's what's quietly miraculous. True clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes when thinking stops. Think about the moments when insight finally arrived. Was it while you were buried in thought? Or did it come when you least expected it, during a walk, in the shower, while watching sunlight spill through your window? These were not moments of mental effort. They were moments of surrender. You made space. And in that space, wisdom surfaced, not because you chased it, but because you finally got out of its way. We all want peace, deeply, desperately, but we keep trying to think our way to it, and that's the trap. Because peace is not something you find at the end of an exhausting mental chase. It's what remains when you stop running. It's what rises when you stop trying to fix everything, when you finally sit with yourself without the noise. So here's the quiet truth. The next time your mind begins to spiral, when thoughts start piling on top of each other, like waves crashing in a storm, pause, breathe. Remember the pond. Remember that the clarity you're looking for won't come from stirring the waters, but from letting them settle. Let silence be the doorway. Let stillness be the teacher. Let go of the need to solve, and you may just discover the answer was waiting in the quiet all along. Practice this the next time your thoughts spiral. Don't dive deeper. Interrupt the pattern. Close your eyes. Inhale peace. Exhale the story. One breath fully taken can do more than 100 thoughts. Ask yourself, am I thinking or avoiding? There's a difference. Sometimes thinking becomes a shield from feeling, from making a decision, from facing the unknown. but life moves when you move, not when you overanalyze every turn. Set boundaries with your thoughts. If you're stuck on a decision, give yourself a deadline. Don't let it bleed into paralysis. Clarity loves decisiveness. Even a small action disrupts the mental loop. Trust simplicity, that quiet gut feeling you keep brushing aside. It's not weakness, it's wisdom, but you can't hear it while overthinking shouts over it. What would happen if you stopped fixing and just started feeling the discomfort, feeling the fear, letting it pass like a wave, instead of trying to control it with logic? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all, not in apathy, but in awareness, in presence. Because the moment you stop resisting the present moment, it begins to speak to you, and that's where guidance lives. Are your thoughts helping or holding you hostage? This is your reminder that your mind is a tool, not your master, and tools only work when you learn when to put them down. So stop stirring, let the pond clear, let silence rise. And you may just find everything you've been seeking has been waiting there beneath the noise the whole time. Peace isn't out there, it's what's left when you let go. Why caring too much backfires? Sometimes we care so much, we crush the very thing we're trying to protect. We smother dreams with perfectionism, relationships with expectations, and our own peace with pressure. It feels noble, this deep caring, but often it's fear in disguise. The fear of losing control, the fear of not being enough, the fear of not being loved unless we constantly prove our worth. But just like a flame, love and purpose grow only when they have air. Caring deeply doesn't mean clinging desperately. You've probably felt it, the heavy weight of holding everything together for everyone all the time. You say yes when you're exhausted, you try to manage others' emotions, you take responsibility for problems that were never yours to fix. It feels like compassion, but it's actually over-responsibility, and that doesn't lead to connection, it leads to burnout. In Buddhism, loving kindness isn't about control, it's about presence, being with someone or even yourself, without fixing, forcing, or managing, letting people breathe, letting life breathe. When you truly care, you create space, and in that space, growth happens. Ask yourself, am I trying to be everything for everyone? It's not your job to be the healer, the pleaser, the perfect one. That's ego dressed as service. Real compassion begins when you allow people to live their own journeys, even when it's messy, even when it's not how you would choose. Let go of the need to be understood all the time. Let go of trying to control how someone sees you. When your worth is tied to external validation, your care becomes conditional, subtle, but heavy. And that's not love. That's fear pretending to be love. Reframe care as presence. Sit with someone without offering advice. Support without solving. Allow yourself to rest without guilt. Care for yourself not because you're trying to be better, but because you're already worthy. Release anxious attachment. The constant checking, the fear of being forgotten, the overthinking after every conversation, that's not intuition, it's insecurity, and that insecurity will sabotage your peace if you don't meet it with awareness. What would happen if you stopped trying to manage everything, if you trusted that people could survive without your constant intervention, that situations could resolve without your control? You'd be lighter, freer, and ironically, your relationships would deepen because they'd be built on trust, not tension. Not everything is yours to carry. You're allowed to care without controlling, to love without losing yourself, to give without grasping. Are you truly caring, or are you managing others with good intentions? This is your invitation to stop trying so hard. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to overgive to be valuable. Let the flame breathe. Let your soul breathe. Let go. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand what real care looks like. And when you do, everything, peace, clarity, connection, begins to fall into place. What happens when you stop seeking validation? You were not born to be approved. You were born to be authentic. But somewhere along the way, applause became oxygen. The likes, the praise, the nods of approval, they started to feel like proof that you're enough. And slowly, without realizing it, your peace became tied to someone else's opinion. But here's the truth. A mountain doesn't need approval to stand tall. It just stands, unmoved, unshaken, whole. The constant chase for validation is silent but exhausting. You might dress it up as ambition, as being driven. But if your self-worth crumbles when someone disapproves, that's not drive, that's dependence, and it's keeping you from your full power. Because when you live for applause, you become a performer in your own life. Always asking, was that good enough? Do they like me? But validation is a moving target. It changes with trends, with moods, with people's projections. How can you build a stable life on such shaky ground? Buddhism teaches us that freedom comes not from being liked, but from being real. When you release the craving for approval, something sacred happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You start living in alignment, not performance. You do things not for recognition, but because they're true for you. Ask yourself, who am I when no one's watching? If no one clapped, if no one noticed, would I still do what I love? Would I still speak my truth? Would I still show up? You are enough without applause. You are valid even in silence, and that's the shift. When you stop outsourcing your worth, you stop living in fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being invisible. In that fearless space, creativity flows, courage rises, purpose returns. Try this each day. Validate yourself, not with ego, but with truth. Name 3 things you did well, just for you. Maybe you showed up despite the fear, maybe you set a boundary, maybe you rested without guilt. Let those moments be enough. And the next time someone praises or criticizes you, observe it without clinging. Don't let it define you. Praise and criticism are just weather patterns. They pass, your essence doesn't change because of them. Step into solitude, not loneliness. Solitude is the space where no one else's opinion echoes. That's where the real you waits. The one who knows what to do. The one who doesn't need permission to breathe freely. So ask yourself honestly, are you living for applause or for alignment? Because if you're chasing applause, you'll always feel behind. But if you're living in alignment, even your silence will echo with power. Let go of the need to be seen, and you'll finally see yourself, not as a version shaped by others, but as the mountain you've always been, unshakable, quietly powerful, completely enough. The whatever mindset and how it changes everything. You don't need to control everything to be at peace. In fact, the more you try to manage, fix, and force life into your image of how it should be, the more chaotic your inner world becomes. But there's a mindset, quiet, powerful, and deeply liberating, that shifts the entire game. It's the whatever mindset, not from apathy, but from a place of grounded wisdom. Whatever happens, happens, I remain. That's not giving up, that's anchoring yourself in something deeper than outcomes. Life is unpredictable by nature. Plans fall apart, people change, dreams evolve. The mind wants to panic, scramble for control, demand certainty, resist what is. But what if peace wasn't about everything going your way, but about your ability to stay unmoved when it doesn't, like the wind flowing around the mountain, not fighting it. The mountain doesn't flinch, it doesn't argue, it just remains. This mindset, this whatever consciousness, is not indifference. It's spiritual confidence. It's knowing that you can handle life as it is, not just when it's convenient. It's being rooted in your truth, even when the ground feels like it's shifting. And in that grounded space, you begin to see clearly. You stop overreacting. You stop making everything so personal. You start choosing your peace over your pride. Try practicing radical neutrality. The next time someone says something triggering, pause, observe your reaction instead of obeying it. Ask, does this need a response or just my awareness? In chaos, whisper to yourself, this doesn't define me, because it doesn't. Your value isn't tied to how smoothly life unfolds. It's revealed in how calmly you hold yourself when it doesn't. Use humor as a spiritual tool. When something goes wrong, laugh gently, shrug a little, and ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Probably not. So don't give it 5 hours of your peace. Sometimes peace is found not in answers, but in letting go of the need to have them. Can you remain calm while everything changes? That's the question, because if your peace depends on stability, you'll never have it. But if your peace is built on presence, surrender, and inner steadiness, then no storm can uproot you. The whatever mindset doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful, because when you stop needing things to be a certain way, you begin to live in harmony with life itself. You stop resisting, you start flowing, you become the mountain, anchored, steady, unmoved. So the next time life spins sideways, take a breath and say it softly. Whatever happens, happens, I remain. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Because letting go isn't losing control, it's letting life meet you where you truly are. And when you do, everything, clarity, strength, alignment, falls into place. You are not your thoughts. Reclaiming the stillness beneath the storm. Most people live their entire lives confined inside a prison they cannot see, a prison built not of walls or chains, but of thoughts. This prison is silent, internal, invisible, and yet it dictates everything. We believe the voice inside our head is the voice of truth. Every worry, every judgment, every self-criticism, we don't question them. We just absorb them, react to them, obey them. But here's a truth that can unmake the entire illusion. You are not your thoughts. You are the one watching your thoughts. You are the sky, not the storm. Thoughts pass like clouds, some light, some heavy, some dark and loud, but the sky remains untouched. It doesn't resist the weather, it doesn't collapse when a storm rolls through. It holds space for everything, and then clears. This is the shift that changes everything. Observe the mind, don't obey it. You don't have to follow every command it gives. You don't have to believe every story it tells. There was a time in your life, maybe there still is, when one anxious thought could unravel your entire day. One negative comment, one internal jab of I'm not enough, and your peace would spiral. But what if those thoughts weren't truth at all? What if they were just echoes of old beliefs, unhealed fears, inherited programming? Thoughts arise automatically. That's not your fault. The mind is conditioned to generate stories, sometimes helpful, often not. But the moment you begin to identify with those thoughts, that's when suffering begins. When you mistake the voice of fear for the voice of truth. But here's the liberating realization. You are not the voice that says, I'm falling behind. You are the one who hears it. And when you can hear that voice without becoming it, something miraculous begins to happen. Space opens up, and in that space, freedom. Try this. The next time your mind begins to race, thoughts tumbling over each other like waves in a storm, pause. Don't fight the storm. Don't try to stop it. Just notice. Watch your thoughts the way a bird watches the clouds from above with quiet presence. Whisper gently to yourself, this is just thinking. That simple phrase can anchor you in awareness. Then return. Return to your breath, your body, your senses. Return to now. You'll begin to see something quietly profound. Your mind creates noise, not because it's broken, but because it's trying to feel safe. It clings to thoughts the way a frightened child clings to familiar toys, but awareness doesn't need to feel safe. It simply is. It doesn't panic. It doesn't argue. It watches. It waits. It holds. Begin to name the patterns. That inner voice saying you're behind in life, that's not wisdom, it's programming. Ask yourself, is this thought helpful or just habitual? Most of what plays on repeat in your head isn't new. It's recycled material from the past. From fear, from ego. These thoughts don't deserve your obedience. They just crave your attention. And when you stop giving every thought the spotlight, when you stop trying to argue, fix, or control them, something inside you softens, something quiet returns. You stop managing your mind like a tyrant. You stop trying to control every moment like a puppet master. And in that softening, clarity arises, not from thinking your way to it, but from creating space for it to emerge on its own. This is the heart of mindfulness, the essence of Buddhist wisdom. The Buddha never said to destroy the mind. He said to understand it, to observe it, to sit beside it, like you would a river, watching it flow without needing to jump in and be carried away. Every time you pause and say, "I am not my thoughts," you reclaim your power. You step out of the storm. You return to the stillness beneath it. So today, ask yourself gently, what thoughts have I mistaken for truth? Then go deeper. Am I the thinker, or the awareness behind the thought? You are not the clouds. You are the vast, open sky, untouched, unshaken. And the moment you stop fighting the weather, you remember the sky never needed protecting, it just needed remembering. Surrender is a superpower. There comes a moment when your strength is not measured by how tightly you hold on, but by how softly you let go. That's the moment when everything shifts, because what if surrender isn't weakness? What if it's your greatest superpower? Imagine a boat struggling to row against a fierce current. No matter how hard it pushes, it stays stuck, or worse, gets dragged under. But the moment it stops fighting, the river carries it. That's what surrender does. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving in to what already is. Most of us live in resistance. We push against outcomes, cling to plans, wrestle with the unknown, and call it ambition. But deep down, we're just afraid of losing control, afraid of being seen as weak. But here's the truth. Control is an illusion, and resistance is exhausting. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what's not in your hands. You take action from clarity, not chaos. You move with life, not against it. Ask yourself right now, where am I forcing something that no longer flows? Maybe it's a relationship, a job, or a dream that's changed form. Are you rowing in circles out of fear of drifting, or are you ready to trust the current? Try this, breathe in deeply and say, "I don't know," and that's okay. Feel the freedom in that. Feel the space it creates. You don't need to have all the answers to take the next step. You just need to stop gripping so tightly. The most powerful moments in your life likely didn't come from planning. They came when you least expected, when you surrendered, when you said, "I can't force this anymore," and suddenly the right person appeared. The decision became clear. The path unfolded. That's not coincidence. That's clarity being allowed to rise from stillness. When the mind stops struggling, life begins to speak. In Buddhism, surrender is not a passive act. It's active trust. Trust in the impermanence of things, trust in the wisdom of now, trust that life is not something to conquer, but to align with. Even the Buddha said that clinging is the suffering. Letting go isn't failure. It's freedom. It's the doorway to peace. So ask yourself today, what am I still fighting that no longer serves me? Is it a version of yourself you've outgrown, an outcome you're obsessed with, an identity rooted in fear? Maybe, just maybe. Surrender is the bridge to your next level. The moment you stop demanding that life be something else, you start living in what it already is, and that's where all the magic happens. Let go of the outcome. Anchor into the action. Do your part, then release the rest. That's not laziness, that's alignment. That's not apathy, that's inner peace. How much peace could you gain by simply surrendering the fight, because when you finally let go, everything falls into place. Embrace groundlessness. There's a quiet fear many never name, the fear of groundlessness, that in-between space where nothing feels solid, where identities dissolve and plans fall apart. And yet, that space is exactly where transformation begins. Like a tree surrendering its leaves in autumn, growth demands we let go before we bloom. But we cling, we grip to what we know, titles, routines, relationships, definitions of who we're supposed to be. Not because they're true, but because they feel familiar. Certainty becomes a comfort zone, but truth lives in uncertainty. There's a reason so many feel stuck right now. It's not because they're doing the wrong thing, it's because they're trying to control what cannot be controlled. They're waiting for life to become predictable before they move forward. But the deeper wisdom is this: groundlessness is not the problem. It's the portal. The cocoon doesn't promise a butterfly. It just asks the caterpillar to dissolve. In the same way, your next evolution doesn't need your certainty, it needs your surrender. Can you trust yourself even when the ground shifts beneath you? Think about the most pivotal moments in your life. Were they planned, or were they born from chaos? From the very moments you thought you were falling apart. Sometimes falling apart is falling into place, but only if you stop resisting. Sit with the unknown. Let it be uncomfortable. Let it stretch you, break you open. Strip away what was never truly yours. Don't rush to fill the silence with answers. Let it speak. We've been taught to fear not knowing, but in Buddhist practice, groundlessness is sacred. It's the space where ego dies and truth emerges. It's where attachments loosen and the self remembers its depth. When you no longer need everything to make sense, you become powerful because you're no longer negotiating with life. You're meeting it fully, without guarantees, without scripts, just presence. Try this the next time life feels unstable. Pause and breathe. Say to yourself, this too is part of the path. You're not lost, you're being remade. Stop asking for the map. Become the explorer. Let life shake you, then watch what stays standing. Often, it's not what you expected, but it's what's real. And what's real will never abandon you. Ask yourself, are you clinging to certainty or evolving through chaos? Do you trust the unfolding, or are you still trying to rewrite what already is? Growth is not about holding it all together. It's about falling apart with grace. Let the leaves fall. Let the old identity dissolve. Let yourself be bare, because only in that openness can something new take root. When you stop chasing the ground beneath you, you realize you are the ground. You are the stillness in the storm. So don't fear the unknown. Embrace it. That's where your next chapter lives. That's where your freedom begins. When you finally let go of needing the ground to stay still, everything starts to rise from within. Let the moment lead, the quiet art of living in flow. Imagine a river, winding its way through forests and valleys, through light and shadow. It does not resist the path laid before it. It doesn't question the rocks or rage against the bends. It moves, fluid, unhurried, wise in its simplicity. This is the way of nature. And this, too, is the essence of surrender. Not as defeat, but as deep alignment. A sacred willingness to let the moment lead. We, on the other hand, are taught to resist. We clench tightly to the illusion of control, managing every corner of our careers, our relationships, even our inner lives with a kind of desperate precision. We micromanage our emotions, script our identities, and cling to imagined outcomes like lifelines. But the tighter we hold, the more life slips through our fingers. The more we try to manage the moment, the further we drift from living it. The present moment is the only place where life truly breathes, where peace, clarity, and purpose quietly wait to be rediscovered. But we miss it, over and over, because we're stuck in autopilot, caught between regret for the past and anxiety for the future. We rush, we plan, we strive. But rarely do we pause. Rarely do we soften and ask, what is life asking of me right now? That single question is revolutionary. It interrupts the spiral. It brings you home. When you stop charging forward or shrinking back, when you stand still just long enough to listen, the moment begins to speak. It doesn't always offer answers wrapped in certainty, but it offers presence, and presence always holds the next step. This shift from control to curiosity, this quiet, radical turning toward the now, is where transformation begins. Sometimes what life asks of you is rest. Sometimes it's courage. Sometimes it's grief, or forgiveness, or letting go of the version of yourself you've outgrown. And sometimes it's simply stillness, permission to stop solving and just be. Think of the delays that frustrate you, the plans that fall through, the pauses that feel unfair or stagnant. What if they aren't detours, but divine timing? What if the moments you most want to skip over are the very ones holding your next becoming? Healing often hides in the pause. Growth often begins with surrender. When you stop demanding that life follow your timeline and start aligning with life's own rhythm, something inside begins to settle. You stop swimming upstream, exhausting yourself against a current that was never yours to control. Instead, you float. You trust. You become available to grace. Ask yourself, gently, what wisdom is here in this very moment, if I stop trying to skip it? Sometimes the answer is clarity. Sometimes it's peace. And sometimes it's simply the soft reminder that you are not lost. You are in process. You are in motion, even when you're standing still. Because every moment, even the quiet ones, holds a kind of sacred instruction. This is the foundation of inner peace, not perfection, not achievement, but presence. And from that presence, purpose begins to reveal itself, not as something you chase, but as something you remember. The chaos outside may continue, but inside, you are anchored, no longer reactive. No longer chasing or clinging, you are engaged with what is, not what was or what should have been. Living in the moment is not passivity. It's not giving up. It's radical, embodied trust. It's a full-bodied yes to life as it is right now, even when it's uncertain. Even when it's uncomfortable, it is choosing to walk with life, not against it. Flow, not force. And then, almost without trying, things begin to fall into place. Not because you controlled them, but because you finally stopped interfering. Your work, your relationships, your inner alignment, they begin to harmonize naturally when you're no longer swimming against yourself. You become like the river, steady, yielding, alive, grounded in your truth, free in your motion. In this flow, you rediscover the ease you forgot was possible. The kind of ease that doesn't come from everything being perfect, but from being present with whatever is. Here, peace and purpose are not opposites. They walk hand in hand. And when you let the moment lead, you return to what life always wanted to give you, not control, but connection. Release the need to fix everything. Trying to fix everything all at once is like attempting to mend the ocean with a tiny spoon, exhausting, impossible, and draining your very spirit. We often carry this hidden burden, believing it's our job to patch every crack in relationships, careers, or even within ourselves. But here's a truth that sets you free. Not everything broken needs your glue. Letting go means releasing the illusion that you are responsible for fixing others or controlling situations beyond your reach. This is not about giving up. It's about discerning what truly belongs to you and what doesn't. Imagine how much peace you could gain by stepping back and recognizing where your responsibility ends and another's growth begins. Take a moment before reacting, breathe deeply, and choose presence over pressure. This simple pause creates space between impulse and action, allowing clarity to emerge. Ask yourself gently, Is this mine to fix or theirs to grow from? This question is a powerful boundary setter, reminding you that growth is often uncomfortable, even messy, but necessary for transformation. When you try to rescue everyone or control every outcome, you inadvertently stunt not only their growth, but your own. Your silence, your willingness to hold space without interference, can be more powerful than any solution you impose. Consider the emotional overwhelm you might be feeling. Is it because you've been carrying more than your share? You may feel obligated to keep it together for others, to smooth every ripple in your career or life transitions. But what if the peace you're seeking is blocked by this very need to fix? What if surrendering this urge to control doesn't mean weakness, but strength? Strength to let life flow naturally and trust that others have their own journeys to navigate. There's profound freedom in releasing the fixer role. It allows you to redirect your energy inward, focusing on your healing, your clarity, and your purpose. You become a witness rather than a rescuer, a compassionate observer rather than a frantic problem solver. This shift opens a calm space within, a quiet center where you no longer feel pressured to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. The moment you accept that you cannot fix everything, a transformation begins. You start to see that growth unfolds in its own time, and sometimes the best support you offer is simply to be present without interference. Like a tree standing firm in the storm, your grounded presence is a source of strength, not because you control the winds, but because you don't resist them. So ask yourself, what piece are you blocking by trying to hold it all together? What if your silence, your trust, your willingness to let go is exactly what's needed for you and for those around you? When you finally release this need to fix everything, the currents of life shift, you step into a flow where everything begins to fall into place naturally, and the exhausting spoon finally rests. Bonus lesson: the art of doing less, being more. Imagine a lotus blooming not by frantic effort, but by surrendering to the stillness of the water beneath it. This is the art of doing less and being more. In a world focused on hustle, success, and constant movement, we often forget something important: just being is enough. When you finally release the urge to always prove yourself by doing, you make room for your true self to come forward naturally. Real growth doesn't happen by trying harder. It starts in the calm surrender to the present moment. Try this. Spend a few minutes each day in quiet, without distractions or plans. Let the noise in your mind settle like dust sinking in still water. Notice how your body relaxes, how your breathing becomes slower, and how your nervous system starts to calm. This isn't laziness or escape. It's a vital practice of coming back to who you are. When you stop doing all the time, you begin to truly be, and from that state of being, right actions come on their own. Ask yourself, what if I stopped pushing and simply trusted who I am? What if the endless race to prove your worth, your value, or your identity is just a story you've heard, but no longer need to follow? In the quiet, there's nothing to fix or perform. You no longer have to carry the burden of pressure, fear, or expectations. Silence reveals a deep truth. You are already enough. Who are you when there's nothing you need to do? This question leads you to real freedom. When you're not driven by the urge to achieve or control, you begin to notice the peace beneath all the noise. You realize that your worth isn't found in what you do, but in who you are. This changes everything, from how you view yourself to how you connect with the world. The habit of constant doing fades, and presence becomes your strongest state. In this stillness, life begins to move in surprising ways. New paths open, ideas flow, and answers show up not because you chase them, but because you made space for them to arrive. Doing less is not about stepping away from life. It's about going deeper into it. It's about trusting the way things unfold instead of clinging to results. It's about being the steady center in the chaos, the one who creates from peace. So ask yourself, what are you trying to prove that silence hasn't already confirmed? What weight could you set down if you truly believe that your essence is enough? When you finally release the need to do more, you allow life to come together not through effort but through your presence. In this letting go, you blossom like a lotus, beautiful, whole, and deeply at peace. Summary: the illusion of control shows us why surrender works. Trying to manage everything only brings stress and frustration. Life moves more smoothly when you stop fighting it and let it unfold on its own. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means having trust in the journey. Peace comes not from holding on, but from letting go. The paradox of detachment is this: real detachment gives you power by freeing your actions from desperate outcomes. When you stop being emotionally tied to the result, you gain peace, focus, and presence. You act from strength, not fear. Detachment welcomes what control usually drives away. How overthinking pushes away what you truly want. Overthinking fills your mind with noise, blocking your clarity and intuition. Letting go of those endless thoughts brings you back to inner peace. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from quiet awareness. Stillness is the hidden power. Why caring too much can backfire? Overcaring often comes from fear instead of love. When you care too much, you lose yourself in the result or in trying to please others. Healthy love grows in freedom and space. Letting go helps your relationships and your energy to flourish. What shifts when you stop chasing validation? When you no longer rely on others for approval, you reclaim your inner strength. Your value isn't measured by praise or opinions. The urge to impress fades as you begin living true to yourself. Validation turns inward. Fire protein, whatever belth. Thurzum, the whatever mindset. Adopting a whatever happens mindset builds emotional strength. It helps you move through change, setbacks, and chaos with steady calm. Indifference isn't weakness, it's strength rooted in inner peace. This mindset protects your focus and your energy. You are not your thoughts. Most thoughts are automatic and often untrue. When you stop attaching to them, you discover you're the awareness behind them. This brings emotional space from pain and negativity. Letting go of thoughts brings freedom. Surrender becomes your strength. Surrender isn't weakness, it's accepting what's out of your control. This releases emotional tension and allows life to shift in surprising ways. When you flow with life, you stop creating extra pain. Surrender is hidden strength. Surrender is hidden strength. Welcome groundlessness, the hidden power of letting go. What if the very ground you're so afraid to lose is the doorway to your transformation? We spend our lives clinging to certainty, to comfort, to control, as if stability were the measure of strength. But the truth is, real growth rarely begins in the familiar. It begins in the tremble, in the quiet panic of the unknown. It begins the moment we stop resisting change and start welcoming groundlessness. Groundlessness is not failure. It is not weakness. It's the raw space where your next becoming is being shaped. When you stop fearing the unknown, you begin to trust yourself, not the surface self that craves validation, but the deeper self that knows how to walk in the dark, that knows how to bend, how to rise, how to begin again. Let this moment guide you, not your plan, not your past, not your fear. This moment. Life doesn't happen in your strategy. It happens now. And the moment you drop the script you've been clinging to, the story of how things were supposed to go, you begin to see again. You begin to hear again. Clarity returns. Because every moment, if you're paying attention, holds a kind of quiet wisdom. You don't have to search for it. It's already here. You just have to slow down enough to receive it. And while you're slowing down, let go of the exhausting urge to fix everything. You are not here to carry the weight of the world. You are not here to save, to solve, to patch every broken edge of everyone you meet. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is your presence, your breath, your stillness, your unhurried, unjudging being. This is the art of less doing, more being. We've been taught that effort equals value, that productivity equals purpose, but the deepest shifts in life rarely come from doing more. They come from being more present, more honest, more aligned. When you stop scrambling to fix, to act, to please, you create space. And in that space, your deeper self begins to rise. Not the self that performs, but the one that knows. And from that knowing, the right actions will come, effortless, clear, and true. You don't gain control by holding tighter. You gain it by releasing the illusions that have been quietly suffocating you. The illusion that you must have all the answers, that you must always be right, that you must always be liked. Let those go. Let the perfection go. Let the pleasing go. Let the storm rage if it must, but find your peace within it. Because that's where real strength lives, not in force, but in surrender, and not the kind of surrender that means defeat, but the surrender of ego, of fear, the constant need to manage life like a fragile machine. When you release what you cannot control, you begin shaping something even more powerful, your inner world, and slowly, quietly, your outer world begins to respond. Root yourself in your truth, in your breath, in your stillness. You don't need to chase alignment. You become aligned by letting go of what pulls you away from yourself. That's where your true success begins. That's where the peace and power you've been searching for finally reveal themselves. Zen reminds us the bamboo does not break in the wind. It bends, it flows, it moves with life, not against it. Be like the bamboo, resilient, flexible, open, not because you've given up, but because you finally remembered you were never meant to control the storm. You were meant to find your peace within it. And when you do, when you let go of clinging and finally fall into trust, you'll discover something remarkable. Life was never trying to break you. It was trying to open you.